now I'm going to record on this call. So on podcasting, it's near and dear to my heart. Let's see here. I'll just tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. A little bit of welcome, a framework for conducting interviews. We'll just talk about some tools. Podcasting could work really good with, for example, the civic engagement or basically any curricular area. I'm thinking that a lot of students, as I've worked with YCCS, really love using their smartphone. So how to capture an interview on a smartphone, how to transfer those from a smartphone to maybe a computer for editing, how to edit it using some tools, and then how to reach a worldwide audience. And then we'll have a quick reflection. I also want to talk about when we capture on an interview on a smartphone, I'm going to show it two ways. If you were in person, there's one way, and that's pretty easy. But if now with COVID, if you're doing interviews remotely, I'll be sharing some tools for doing that too, so that if your students are remote, they could still do projects. Okay, it looks like we've had another person join. So welcome, Pedro. All right.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Tammy Frame, and as I was saying, podcasting is kind of near and dear to my heart. In Wisconsin here, we used to do a conference every year for educators, and we would always hold it at a museum. And the first couple years, we had educators make podcasts at the museum about different exhibits in the museum, and then those were also QR coded so that people could use their cell phone to hear the different podcasts, or it could be like a syndicated podcast. And we just had a great time with that. Some things that I would say about podcasting is it might seem a little bit daunting at the beginning because there is a little bit of setup and tools, and I have all of the instructions linked here. One thing that I like to tell teachers and faculty a lot is I don't think you always need to be the technologist. I think what you need to be is the learning specialist for your students. So I would hope that you could take this link also. This is another way you could use it. Hi, Lashandra. And you could give that link to your students and they could follow along and do the setup for their phone or whatever apps they would like to use. And one of the standards that is we want students to graduate with is that they can read and understand technical directions too. So at the high school level, you might want to challenge them to use this link with this slide share to do some of the setup on their own too. And you're maybe thinking more about the content, the writing, the interviews, how they're going to conduct them, and things like that. Okay. Um, I also put media coach facilitator because that's my role in this presentation. So at the very end, I have my contact information, and I want you to know that as you and your students are working on this, I would be happy to help you out, and you can contact me beyond this workshop if you get stuck or you need some support. I'd be more than happy to help you with that too. So, all right. Um, so first of all, just a definition of what a podcast is. It's a digital audio file that is available on the internet that you can download and to any mobile device. So it could be your phone, a tablet, a computer, and people can subscribe to it and automatically through an RSS feed be told when there's a new episode. And we're going to talk about how you can do that and how you can get an RSS feed and all those good things. Um, Podcasts typically are more than one episode, so you might want to think about how often and how you could do that. Maybe you even share it between campuses, and each campus does one episode. That would be another way that you could do it. Um, so, welcome, Marvin. It's nice to see you. I'm going to make you a co host. And if you want to put anything in the chat or help, that would be fantastic. Okay, so you just became a co-host, okay, and we are recording. I'm not hearing you yet, but maybe see if I'm able
I
to.
had to unmute myself. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Okay, no worries. Welcome.
Nice to see you.
Great. Nice to see you too. Okay, and I am recording, so we can make the recording available after this too. But if you have things that you want to be chatting or back channeling about in the chat, I welcome that. And then Marvin can stop me if there are questions and kind of help facilitate. So I really appreciate the having some help. So
No
thanks.
problem.
All right. Um, just a plug for podcasts. It turns out that podcasting is really growing. It's grown over 120% over the last 4 years in America. And currently, over 90 million Americans listen to a podcast every month. And I know with the civic engagement projects that I've been involved in the past, getting the student voice out, especially with all the current issues that are going on, this is a way to empower youth, to give them a voice on a worldwide scale. And it can be very exciting to have their voice open to so many people. So this could be a very powerful platform for students to get their ideas out there in the world. So the next thing I wanted to do is in the chat, I was interested if anybody currently subscribes to any podcasts. So if you want to navigate over to the chat, anybody, you don't have to say who you are. You can just kind of put a stream in the chat of what kind of podcasts, if anybody's listening to any. If you're not and you're interested in podcasting, that might be a good first step, is to take some recommendations from your colleagues and start listening to some of them. So if anybody listens on a regular basis to a podcast, go ahead and put that in there. Okay, and the chat, if you're new to Zoom, should be on the Zoom controls at the bottom. Okay, I'll give you a second to try that, navigate there. I'll put one that I listen to. I listen to one called Hidden Brain. Okay, Joe Rogan podcast and Joe Budden podcast. Thank you, Marvin. Yeah. Anybody else listening to podcasts? Okay. Well, if you think of some, feel free to put them in the chat, because if you're not currently listening to a podcast, that might be step one to get a feel for different styles, for how they work, what you might want to do in your podcast with your students. Gents with drinks, thank you. That sounds like fun. All right. So real quickly, what are some benefits? Why would we want to do this with students? So because it's authentic learning, anytime you do something authentic in real world, it's going to improve engagement. I also think that students, as we go through this, they're going to learn a lot of tech skills, and that can help them be employable. And so and it might help them decide what career avenues they want to go into. So it's a very needed skill. They're going to learn a lot of 21st century skills. Like I said, I would recommend that they also have access to this SlideShare and look at the technical directions and try to figure them out for their phone. And I like this one. This came from the Center for Urban Pedagogy. I think by making a podcast, students realize that the world is knowable, and you can find out how the world works by asking enough people, especially from interviewing. You can learn so much. And people have been so surprised at some of the interviews I've been able to conduct. I was able to conduct just by doing some research and emailing them cold. Um, Somebody who was a female astronaut on Mars, as she's building different things that are going to go up to Mars. Somebody who has been doing brain surgery, somebody who is working on the plastic garbage dump in the ocean. And I find articles that I'm interested in, and I find the author, and I just email them and say, hey, would you do an interview with me and my students? And 99% of the time, they'll say yes. So don't be shy about asking experts to talk with your students. I think people want to talk to students, especially in their field. Um, Okay, I'm going to try a Zoom poll here, and I want to see, and this would also give us a chance to try this. Have you ever made a podcast before? So something should show up on your screen. Let me know if it's not, and you should say yes or no. Okay. All right. So it sounds like most people have not, and there's this is a great workshop for that. So this is very much at the intro level. Great. Okay. Like I said, I think it's an exciting technology. So you do have to do, I think this is part of the part where I think the teacher is the learning coach. And these are some things that would fall on you to help the students with. So the first step might be working with the students to come up with your idea of your concept for your podcast. Because again, a podcast might be more than once. It might have regular episodes. Maybe that's something you even share between classes or campuses. But what is the purpose of the podcast and what's it about? What are the goals? Like, who are you trying to reach? What is it that students want to communicate to the worldwide audience? And then pick a theme or a topic. Then you want to name your podcast, and you want to think about in the name, what are some words that people might search for? Because the more searchable it is, the bigger audience you're going to get and the more exciting it becomes. And then you'll want to come up with a schedule, because as people subscribe to your podcast, they're going to expect whatever you put in the description, that every week or once a month, I'm going to get a new podcast. And so be realistic about how often you might be able to put content up into your podcast. All right. Great. Students would probably want to practice doing interviews maybe of each other and then recording them and trying some of the technologies out. Some of the things that can help them as you prepare them and maybe critique their mock interviews is remind them that people can have opinions different than their own. Asking open-ended questions will make a much more interesting podcast. The ability to ask follow-up questions, keeping the questions brief. Sometimes in more socio-political ones, especially people might be uncomfortable in some of the civic engagement interviews that I've seen students do that were awesome. And rephrasing the question if they try and evade it and politely bring them back to what you want them to answer. Um, I would say politely challenge the interviewee. Some of the YCS student projects, I think, have gone into difficult areas, and I really applaud the courage of the students, but I think they should be assertive in getting the answers to the things that they want to ask, even if the person they're interviewing is uncomfortable. I think that the interviews can actually educate the community or the group that they are interviewing. And it can be very beneficial for the other side too. Maybe they've had to think about questions they've never ever thought about before. Another thing that students need to be really comfortable with that is super hard is sometimes just be quiet and let the person think. And oftentimes, if you're quiet, they will answer a question, or maybe if you don't, they'll just give a 1 or 2 word answer. And so just sometimes ask a question and wait maybe 20 seconds and see what happens. And that's hard to do. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is think about different types of questions that you could ask in an interview. So you could start out with some personal questions, some things about their organization, some socio-political questions, um, ideology, ideological. So what would you like the neighborhood to be like? What are the biggest challenges in your work would be socio-political. Sometimes starting with personal organizational first helps warm up the interviewee, and then you can get to some of the harder things. So what I thought we would do next is try a breakout session. And let me just look at how many people we have today in our group. We have 10. Okay, I'm going to try breakout rooms of groups of 2. And what I'd like you to do, I'll put the directions on the next slide. I'm going to try to have it automatically put in a group randomly, so you don't know who you're going to be in the group with. And it should automatically take you there if I do this correctly. And I'd like you to try and come up with an interview question from one of these categories. And then we'll have you present your question and we'll see if we can guess what category it goes in. Sound good? All right. So let me get to my controls. Let me go to, and this is something that you could try with your students too. So I went to this. Maybe we'll do 3 rows, 3 participants in a room, and create rooms and open all rooms. Okay. Okay. And if you haven't, yeah.
Question, this is Ms. Remo. Will you have the slide in each of the rooms?
I don't know. That's a great question.
I think
Are you able to see it when you go in there?
No, I think you have to place it in each room, or actually, you know what? No, you can put it in the chat box. That would be helpful because you can be able to see it in the rooms.
Okay.
Just
all
a
right.
little FYI.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll put that in the chat.
Dr. Frame, I got kicked out of my room. I guess
Oh,
because I
no.
was in there by myself.
Okay. Let's see. Do you have a join anywhere? Does it show join? Because I think you can rejoin. Like if do you see on the Zoom things a breakout room option?
Yeah.
Okay, and then does
breakout room. Let me
click that and see if you can join from there.
Okay, I was the only person in there. There was nobody else in there.
Yeah, and I think people keep coming in and out because now just Orlando is in there.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is a good learning too. Okay.
Mondays and Wednesdays for
Okay.
student drop off and pickup.
What yeah, I like that. I asked in one of my like re-engagement back when I first started with YCCS, I did a motivation unit that they were trying to use as part of the re-engagement, and that very similar question behind that was like,
immediately I just thought about the effective communication during the job interview.
So we have to have a question that we're going to use. Okay. So what would your question be?
Why would they think they would be a good fit for our organization? What strong skill sets that they would bring?
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. King. So we have to come up with a question regarding
one of the 4 categories.
Yeah.
And the audience is going to guess which question, which one of the areas that we're talking about. Is it personal? Is it social political? Is it organizational? Or is it ideological? I think that's what it is, ideological.
Yep, perfect. Perfect.
So we have to pick which one of the 4, a question based on the 4 categories.
So kind of if we were to do like social political, especially right now, having a question around, how you can still register for the census. Or do we have to?
That doesn't sound like a question though. What's the question?
So are we coming up with a question kind of utilizing the
you have to have a question. Yep, because you're interviewing someone. So come up with the question. What is the question?
Okay, so like if we're interviewing somebody regarding social political.
The census is a great topic though.
So do you feel right now, especially since the city, they just announced that initiative for the internet for the the disenfranchised neighborhoods, do you see what kind of benefits do you see that having during school and outside of school?
That's a great question.
Okay.
You guys have crushed it. I'm going to leave and see if the other rooms have any questions, but you're doing great. That's a really good one. Okay. All right.
So Mr. Gatter, based on what you just said, you did it perfectly. Like you
Political.
Well, the social political, that will probably tie into when we ask who's the real you, and they go back and start describing their neighborhood, what they see, how long they've been there. Because a lot of times we see the kids, we know their name, but we don't know their struggle of their environment, because it's a lot of kids travel geographically, cross retro territory, gang territory. So I think that would be perfect.
So can we think of a question for sociopolitical, kind of like, what are the challenges of where you reside or where you live, or I don't know, just a question that would kind of open that up, the conversation.
What you see on your block? My block, my city. What do you see on your block?
Well, I'm thinking a question of, does your neighborhood bring challenges? What we might see as a challenge to them might not be challenging.
That's true.
True.
So
they live in it every day. They've grown up in it. So we might be thinking, oh, this could be in their mindset, this is everyday life. This is not a challenge to me.
So do you want to phrase it as what is your community's challenge?
Yes, we could try that.
Okay. So that would be, so we have a question for personal, we have a question for socio-political, and I don't remember the third one. What was it, Tammy? Because we didn't see it.
Personal, organizational. So like, where do you work, or what what do you, yeah. Are these for students you're going to interview?
We were just
Yes.
thinking about
Yeah.
how we would be engaging our, anybody really, because I think we're thinking of our students, having our students in mind, but we're also thinking that first of all, everyone has a story. So we need to get to the core of the story. It's the way we phrase a question to be able to get them to be really, to really share what their story, where they come from. What does that mean to them when you say, who's the real you? That's one of our questions, and
Yeah. So in yours, maybe organizational might be, tell me a little bit about where your neighborhood is located. Like we border whatever, or we're south of Chicago, or, that might be an organizational question for neighborhoods.
okay, so organizational would be more of the
Mm.
geographic.
Yeah. Or it could even be, who's your alderman? Something like that too. Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
I hear you all, but
organizational,
I don't know what happened to my picture. This thing is acting nutty
I
On
today.
there.
I see you.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we see you.
I'm
know
gonna
what?
leave and check the other rooms. You guys are doing awesome. All
Are you
right.
timing? Are you going to kick us out of the room?
Okay.
At 11:30, I'm gonna kick you out of the room. You have
Okay.
2 more minutes. All right.
So what are
Yeah,
the challenges?
having internet issues.
So what are the challenges in your
Hey, I see one group is back. We're gonna have the other groups back in about 2 minutes from now. So I hope you guys had good discussion. I hope you have one question that you can present and maybe know who's going to present. Yeah, that would be great. Let me share my screen again for people that are back. And in about 1 minute, we'll get them all back. Great discussions that were going on in the various rooms. I was really impressed. All right, we're going to close all the rooms. 58. So they have about 60 seconds to rejoin. Here they all come. Welcome back. You guys did great in the breakout rooms, so thank you.
Yeah.
We got about 8 seconds till everybody's back. Had you done breakout sessions before with Zoom and other PD?
Yes.
Yeah,
Breakout rooms are godsend.
they are. They're such a great tool. Yeah, you guys did
Conversation.
fantastic. Yeah, and it allows you to really talk. Okay,
I
well,
wish
it looks
Google
like,
Meet had that.
yeah, me too. That would be awesome. Yeah. So does anybody want to share a question and we'll guess what type it was from their group?
Pedro here. I can
Okay,
go
Pedro.
first.
Awesome. Thank you.
So the question that we came up with was, since the city just announced their initiative for more accessibility for the broadband network in disenfranchised neighborhoods, what are some of the benefits that you see not only for school but outside of school?
strong question. Oh, that rocks. Anybody want to take a stab at what type of question they think that might be?
It's actually two.
Sociopolitical.
It could fall under two. um,
Sociopolitical, I would think.
That was my first inclination. Somebody said two. What would the second one be?
Personal.
I thought it could personal. Well, yeah, but I initially thought of the ideological one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Pedro, what was your group thinking? Were we close?
Yeah, social political.
Okay. Awesome. Good job. That was a fantastic question to lead with. Does somebody have another one from another group?
This is Miss Romago for our group. We were using it in a way we were thinking of, it could be for a guest speaker, but we're looking at students in mind. And so this one, we have two that we came up with. One we have to revise, but describe your community. Because we have students from all over, you know, and if you were to have a guest speaker who comes in and the kids are trying to connect, that would be another way of, you know, obviously community could be interchangeable with other words, neighborhood or what have you, but describe your community.
I love how open-ended it is too. Anybody want to guess which one they think that fits?
Ideological.
Could be. Yeah, especially if the interviewee went into what they hope for their community. I don't know.
I kind of say that. I mean, I know it could be personal, but I understand why. I think I understand why Marvin said ideological, because honestly, like my neighbor and I may describe our community. We live next door to each other. We may describe them totally different based on our own experiences within that community. So it definitely like each kid's lens or each interviewee's lens would be different.
Yeah. So would you put it in personal, that if that is how you're thinking about it?
That's what I'm saying, that it could be either one, but I know, I feel like I'm leaning towards ideological because I feel like the lens,
How you see it.
the lens is almost skewed because, I don't know, the first thing that popped in my head with that was like, you know, you hear people say, well, you know, when I was younger, I didn't know I was poor. You know what I mean? Because when you're in the situation, like you know, if you're around people who are like you don't see yourself.
That's the norm.
And that's the norm, exactly. And so, yes, it is personal, you know, where I was born, but it almost is ideological because only as like a person who's left your neighborhood and came back do you see all the stuff.
Yeah, good
You know
point.
what I mean? So it's kind of a combination of both.
Yeah. And Miss Romo, what did you what were you guys aiming for? What did you?
So, well, now that we're looking at it, because we didn't realize we had ideological at the end. I mean, we were trying to remember because we didn't see we were trying to remember what we saw on the screen. So
yeah,
we initially, I think this is a combination of a couple because when you ask that open-ended question, it brings a lot of different things. And I think what LaShandra said was, you know, in the sense, you know, it hits it, right? Because you can describe it and your perception is your reality. And so you have ideological, although that wasn't what we were aiming for, but we could see how that can fit in there. But we were looking at how our students would probably respond to this in the organization of what their community is like and how they see it. It's also personal. So it kind of overlaps all three of those in some way, depending. We just left it very open-ended. So we kind of left it open-ended for that reason, because we felt that we wanted to really pull that information about where is their thinking, their way of perceiving things, and it could really blend into any of these three depending on the responses.
I love the question. Yeah, that would really warm up the person you're interviewing too, and open a lot of things. You could rephrase questions and go from there. Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, we have one more group to hear from. Trying to think.
That was our group with
I
us.
thought so. I
Yeah,
thought
okay.
so.
Yeah, we did what would you like your neighborhood to be? Something about like Miss Romo's group as well. We kind of ran with the same thing and had the same problem with not being able to remember the questions. But Sako was able to remember one of them, and we went with the community and like, what does it look like? Sako, did you want to add more?
Sure. So the one that I just zeroed in on this because I've been thinking about it a lot. What would you like your neighborhood to be like? And
Mm,
just in the lockdown and all the political stuff that's been
yeah.
happening since then, I've been thinking in my head to ask my students, what do you want your life to be like?
Oh,
Because
another good one.
I think that's a definite ideological question, but it's also a stimulating to the imagination question. And I really want to hear what they're thinking, because I think this is like, asking them, what are you capable of? What are you, so that's a conversation. Just like I'm a film teacher, and so films are conversations,
Yes,
and
they are.
and so are podcasts. Podcasts are conversations too, and they're the beginning of a conversation that should go on beyond the podcast, should go on beyond the film. So
Excellent. This was really deep. So this is a possible framework you could use for writing interview questions with your students. The first level would be some personal questions, then some organizational, then maybe some more difficult socio-political, and then maybe ideological at the end of what do you want it to be. Might make a nice interview structure for people. So if you like that, that might be something you can work with your students to come up with some questions in each category. I love the thinking you guys shared. That was awesome. Okay, we're gonna shift gears. These are just some podcasts that might be good where they do interviews, and it might be good to listen to some of these with your students to talk about what they like about the style, what they don't like, and they can develop their own style. Okay, and I might mute somebody. No, okay, it's better now. So
Dr. Frame, can you go back real quick?
Yeah.
Example, Joe Rogan, because I couldn't
I
remember
love
that
Xavier.
name.
Yeah, and Marvin,
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, and
Yeah, because I was
again,
about to cut it. I would have cut it nicer.
okay, let's see.
Gerda, mute.
I'm gonna mute some people till we get it. Okay. Let's see, I still don't have the right person.
You can mute all, Tammy.
Yeah, I think I will. Okay.
In the underneath the chat.
Okay, better. All right, thanks, Marvin. Good tip. Okay, because we are going to end at time at noon, I'm going to fly a little bit faster. So these are sort of some obvious tips, but if you can get students to think about where it's quieter, because it is harder to clean up the audio if there's a lot of background noise, although I will show you how you can remove excess noise too. In this case, knowing where the microphone on your phone is and holding that close to the people speaking. You might even want to do a few seconds of recording and then listen back before the interview and see if there's any wind noise or things like that. It might be good to start every recording where you say who you are, what time it is, who you're interviewing. That just helps, especially if you do a lot of interviews, you can remember. And then every once in a while, make sure that it is still recording. So those are some basic tips that you can share with students. Another legal thing that we need to be aware of, Illinois is a two-party consent state, so that means both of you have to know and consent that the audio is being recorded. You could even put that in your slate and say, this interview is being recorded. Do you consent to that? And they could say yes. You don't have to put that in your podcast, but then you'd have legal proof that they knew that they were being recorded. Okay. As we go through the next parts, we're going to go through these quickly. Some of it I'll demo, some of it I won't. There are directions on everything, but there are maybe 3 techie vocabulary words that are important to know. Bill will, or Mr. Sacco will know these really well, but MP3 is a techie word for sound. So it's a sound recording file, just like you have a Google Doc. Well, a .mp3 means it's a sound file. Same with a .wav, and those are common files that you might upload to your podcast, and ultimately we need to get the audio into a sound file for a podcast. Now, there are technologies like you can make a podcast from a Zoom. So I could make the audio from today into a podcast, and I'll show you how you can convert an MP4, which is what my Zoom recording will be. That's a video format. So some of the tools will actually do video like Zoom, but then you can convert and just keep the audio. So as I talk about these terms, remember that MP3 is sound, MP4 is video, and a WAV is another sound file. Okay. So the next thing I want to do another quick poll. So let me get back to my polls. And I'm interested in what kind of smartphone people are using. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we have 57% so far with iPhone wins and 43% with Android. I happen to be an Android user too. That's another reason we might want to
say those results again one more time for LaShandra? I don't think she heard you.
Okay, it just changed. It just changed.
I heard it.
It's 50-50 now. And I take it that Lysandra takes her phone very seriously. That's another reason we might want to share the link with students, because there are different apps and directions depending on what type of phone you have. So keep that in mind, and I have both. And so students, if they're working remotely with COVID now, they could go through this and find the directions for their phone, basically. So the first set of apps and things to use is if you were doing it in person interview with your smartphone. And I've noticed that the students love using their phones more than a computer, so this might work really well. So some in-person apps, I think the #1 recommended one if you're using an Android is Voice Recorder, and you can find that on the Google Play Store. And so what you would do is just press record and you start recording. When it's done, you'll see 3 dots on the application, and you're going to pick, when you click that, you can click the share button that looks like this, and then you could have the MP3 emailed to you, and that might be the easiest way to get it on your computer. And I tested it out and it worked really slick. Now, if you have an iPhone, I would admit that GarageBand is really cool. It's probably the coolest audio app that you have, and it's free, and so is Voice Recorder. I like to pick only free tools. And so GarageBand comes with your iPhone. So every iPhone has GarageBand already, and it's a really cool tool. So what you'll do is you'll save your GarageBand recording, and then when you do it on your phone, it goes to your iCloud account, which probably makes sense if you're an iPhone user. Then you're going to have to convert, and I have directions on that, to an MP3. Instead of GarageBand format, you have to change it to MP3 for a podcast, whereas the Voice Recorder already comes in MP3. Now, one nice thing about the iPhone and GarageBand, you could even edit your podcast in GarageBand on your phone, where in Voice Recorder, you're going to have to email it to yourself and then I'll show you how to edit it on your computer. And so all the editing could happen on the phone. And there's directions here too that open up that show you how you can edit on GarageBand on your phone. Okay.
Dr. Frame, excuse me.
Yeah.
Gerda put some interesting information in. It says that Zoom also lets you rip the MP3 from the video.
It does.
So that was just some good information.
Yeah, so if you're a Zoom user, we're going to get into that, and I'll show you how to do that a little bit. In one of my examples, I have some ripped Zoom recording that we can use. So if you like Zoom, that's another way you can do it. So that's pretty cool. And Zoom works on your phone or on your computer, either way. So excellent. All right, now because of COVID, it's likely that your students might not be able to go out and interview people live. They might have to do it from home. So I picked 4 applications that can work on your phone remotely or computer, either way. And my advice is if you're already using one of these, use that. You're already comfortable with Zoom, go for it. If you're a Skype user, use that. If you're a Google Meet user, use that. If you've used Google Voice, use that. And these can all be downloaded to your phone, Android or iPhone, and be used to record a remote interview. And I'm going to go through a little bit on each one, sort of like the pros and the cons. So the first one is Google Voice. Any Google Voice users here? You can raise your hand or put in the chat.
How are you? Sorry.
Okay, good. Pedro is. So Google Voice is cool. If you've never used it, it's linked to your Google account, all right? And then you get an actual phone number and you can save money and it's free. So you might want to just use it to save on your cell phone bill if you haven't looked into this already. And it gives you a phone number, and you can actually record by pressing 4. And what will happen is you'll have a regular phone conversation on the phone like you always do, but you press option 4 and it starts recording. And then it goes right into your Google Drive, because when you set up your Google Voice, it's linked to your Google account, so that MP3 will be right in your drive, ready to go. So that's kind of nice. Here's one thing, though, that is not so nice. The recording, for some reason, does not work on school and business Google accounts. I don't know if they're afraid of lawsuits or something, but it does not work. So it would have to be your personal Gmail account, not your school one, because the record feature doesn't work on school and business Google accounts, okay? Also, if you haven't recorded before, okay, so you have to do the 4, okay. And I think that's it. So if you've never used Google Voice, but your ears perked up when it's free, and I could save on my cell phone bill, you want to go to voice.google.com and you link that to your Google account. So it makes you sign into your Google account. And again, your personal account will work better for recording. You go into the settings, which looks like a little gear at the top. Let's see if I can get to mine. So it looks like this, it's coming. And in those, while it's loading, you want to include voice and audio recordings. You want to turn that to on. So it looks like this on the computer. It's got my people, it's got who I've called, it takes voicemail. It's just like a regular phone, so it's pretty cool. But this is the settings up here. And then because mine is a corporate account, I don't have that setting, but you would on your personal one. And you want to look for include voice and audio recordings and enable that by checking it, okay? Then it'll work. Then when you're in a call, you could call somebody. They don't have to have a Google Voice account. You can call them at their regular number, but you'll hit 4 and it'll start recording at the end, and it will tell the people that they're being recorded. So you get around that legal part too, that they were told that they're being recorded, and then it goes right into your Google Drive as an MP3. So that's a real slick way to go. Zoom is a very slick way to go because you can download Zoom to your phone. So if you don't have it already on your phone, you could do that. Then you click record on your phone. And then you have two options in Zoom. It will, I'll go to my Zoom account real quick. You can either do it to your computer, it'll ask you, or if you want to go to the Zoom Cloud. And if you choose Zoom Cloud, when you log into your Zoom account, it will be there for you, which is kind of nice. And so if I go to my account and I go to recordings here, here are my recordings. I can either share them with people, or under more, I can download it. Now, when I download it, it will be an MP4, but no worries. We'll tell you how you can make it an MP3. So Zoom is a great option if you are a Zoomer. Skype also has a record, and you can make phone calls on Skype. I have the directions here. Some people in the forums I was reading said that the audio is not as good. But I have noticed in my interviews that the US isn't so big on Skype anymore. We're more Zoom users. But in Europe, for whatever reason, and overseas, they tend to love Skype. And most people have a Skype account and they Skype all the time. So if you're interviewing somebody from overseas, they may request that the interview happen in Skype.
Dr. Frame?
Yes.
I just did a podcast with a company about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They use Skype.
Okay.
And they said they prefer Skype because the sound quality was better.
Okay.
So it's
maybe,
just the opposite of what you said.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have found that other people overseas like Skype. People in the US tend to like Zoom, but you'll have more luck with people overseas if they use what they're comfortable with. So a lot of them will ask, can we do it in Skype? Yeah, so I'm not sure why that is. But
Skype
thank
is
you.
not user friendly.
I don't think so either, but Europeans love it. They don't find Zoom user friendly, so I don't know. Yeah.
I have a question, Dr. Frame. I was wondering which one of these works better for editing purposes, because I know that you can have a podcast, put it out, but what if you want to edit and that route?
Well, we haven't gone to editing yet. So here's what I would say. It's a great question, Ms. Romo. If you are in person, GarageBand wins hands down. It's just such a great one, and you can even edit it on your phone. If you are remote, like we are in COVID, and then that's why I added these four, then right now in this stage, the first step is just grabbing it and getting it on that phone. And then the next stage will be editing it and getting it off the phone to the computer to edit. So ideally, if you had an app like GarageBand, you could do it all on the phone. But with COVID now, they probably aren't going to sit next to that person. And so they have to record some kind of video or audio session. And then we're going to have to go into how to edit it in the next step. That was a great question. So first step for remote interviews is getting the audio. Next step is editing. Yeah, and GarageBand rocks, I think, if you can do an in-person one.
Yeah, I'm wondering, just a quick question, because I know we have Macs in our studio, in our building. We have a whole set of Macs.
Nice.
But most of our kids have Androids. So I'm just wondering if they were to record in an Android, can they use that audio and then convert it and use it into the GarageBand and edit it?
Yes, They could. That is an excellent, excellent question. So yes, they could, and that would be really slick because GarageBand is such a good auditing. And I have another auditing software that's free for non-Mac users called Audacity that we'll talk about in a minute. But yes, once they capture the audio somehow on their phone, then they need to use that share button or put it in Drive so that they can then download it to a computer to edit. And it doesn't matter if you cross platforms because MP3 is universal to either one. Okay, great questions.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we did Google Voice. Another option is Google Meet. Now, since COVID, companies are trying to help schools, and the G Suite Education Edition, so this time you would use your school email, now has a button to record Google Meet, but you have to, your personal one would not, just the one that you use for school would. And they say that it's only going to be through September 30th, and then they didn't say what's going to happen after the 30th. I think they're evaluating if it's used a lot, maybe they'll continue to allow it to be free. You may need your Google domain administrator, whoever's in IT for your school and manages your Google domain might have to enable it if it's not enabled. But again, that's only for education editions and they've made it free. And then there are directions where you can see screenshots of what you do for that, but you can just click the record. It's nice because the recording goes right to Drive as an MP3. So that's another great way. Okay, so now we get into Miss Romo's question of, okay, we've got audio on our phone. What happens next? And so you need some editing software. And a lot of times this is done on a computer. But if you had GarageBand and you're on an iPhone, you could do it on your phone. The recommendation that I have for people that have a PC, because GarageBand comes free with a Mac, and here I have tutorials on how to do it, and also how to convert a GarageBand to an MP4. And then also I have directions down here, and I'll show you how, if you used a Zoom video that's in an MP4, how to get it as an MP3. So I'm going to demo Audacity. Oh, and we're already at noon quick, so I should end quickly. All right, so the directions for Audacity and GarageBand are here. And again, these are great tutorials that the students could go through and learn. As a rule of thumb, for every hour of interview, and hopefully your interview isn't that long, you're going to need at least an hour of editing usually. Okay, it takes a while to get the music in, to normalize the voice, and this tells them exactly what they need to do. The other thing that I want to show is Buzzsprout. That is a free for 2 hours where you would post the edited audio for the episodes. And it's free for 2 hours a month. You get like a website where with an RSS feed. So you don't have to techie do all that. All you do is upload your MP3 and it has players. So if you wanted to put this on your website, you could embed this code on your website. It also has, what I like is it will automatically, if you say get listed, put on all of these different places people can go, like Apple or Spotify, and imagine how many listeners you can get if you do that. And all you have to do is press get listed. So Buzzsprout takes care of that. You just need to upload that MP3, and it's free for 2 hours a month that you can upload. So I think that is really easy to use, and then you don't have to worry about how do I make an RSS feed, how do I get it on iTunes, all of those things. I can't believe how fast our time went. I'm gonna put the reflection, because I like to end on time. I know you're busy people. who have a lot going on in your lives, and I really appreciate you coming. I'm going to put this in the chat. And then if you would do that for us, we need that to share with the YCCS leadership and possibly for the grant too. So there's just a little
The link is
reflection.
not there.
It is now. Yeah. Sorry. Thanks, Marvin. Is it now?
It is.
Okay. Thank you. The last slide is my contact information because I know we didn't have enough time to do everything that I wanted today. And I knew that you might run into some techie questions. So anytime, including during the school year, if you were part of this workshop, I would help with you and your students. I'd even get on a Zoom if you got stuck or if you want me to show them something. But again, I would say that part of it can be on them. If you give them this URL, they will be able to download apps and follow the tutorials as well, which would be really good for them. And I will help too. I think the first one is a little bit hard because there's like all these technologies, like Miss Romo was saying, well, how do I edit it? But once you've been through end-to-end one, then the next one is so simple, and the one after that is so simple, and it becomes really easy and fun. So if you're getting frustrated or you get stuck or one of the technologies is not working as expected, I would be more than happy to jump on a Zoom for free and help you out, okay? Because I think this would be so cool if you did this with your students.
Tammy, would you mind if I put this information on the YCCS PD website?
Not at all. I would love it. You could put the URL of the slide share. I'm also recording it, so I'll send you the recording too, if people want to listen to that. But I'm just thrilled that people were interested enough to come to the workshop and consider doing podcasts. Like I said, the first time can be a little bit clunky because, oh, I got to download this app and now I got to edit it and then I got to put it in Buzzsprout. But once you've done it the first time, after that, it's always the same and it's set up. Yeah.
So I will make sure I'll work with Tammy to put this and tomorrow's information on the website. So if you don't get it, you want to make sure everyone fills out that reflection. So if you don't get it, we will make sure that the links and things are available for you guys on the website. And there you go, the next website tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I can't believe how fast the time went.
Yes,
But
and I'm
yeah.
sad because I'm teaching at that time. So Marvin, take all the notes. This is the one that we really need.
Yeah, screencasting is really fun.
Yeah, 'cause I've been every week. I ask the group when Michelle and I are doing podcasts, does anybody know how to do this? And I've gotten none. So tomorrow, I will be a diligent student.
Yes, please do, because I have to teach the last of my anti-racist educator workshop tomorrow, so I won't be able to join.
Oh, that sounds good too. And screencasting, believe it or not, is easier than podcasting. So if you're like today, wow, that was a lot of apps. Don't be intimidated. Screencasting is really fun and really easy.
All right, I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
So I want to thank you, Tammy. I wanted to just share that I'm interested in, I'm going to have to join and learn how to, I haven't listened to any podcasts, to be honest. I've been invited. I just, technology, trying to keep up with everything.
I know.
A lot. But I would like to know how to, just for the sake of our students, if we create some sort of a podcast where they can have subscribers and, you know, and kind of have followers, that would be something I would be interested in. And I don't know, just thinking about.
Yeah. So what happens is when you put your first episode, and it's super easy, all you do is upload, and then it'll ask you what you want to name it and things like that, the author, and if you want a little thumbnail. But it automatically creates a website for you that you could give to people or link, and it has this RSS feed, and that's what people use in podcast language to subscribe.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they can get an update on their computer every time you do a new episode. But a lot of people find podcasts through Spotify or Apple or Google, and yours can be listed on Spotify and be found. And that's how you can get a massive audience. And all you have to do is put it in Buzzsprout, and then you can choose which things, Pandora, Alexa. Imagine if your students could be like, Alexa, YCCS podcast, you know?
Oh, wow.
Yes. So
one of the things-
Buzzsprout makes it super easy for you.
Okay, one of the things too that I was interested in learning is once they do that, because I haven't done it, I guess I have to try. I'm going to try it, play with it. Is also to be able to help our students get the word out and have their own podcast, but also look at the data, the analytics. You know, like analyze and we can kind of use that as a way of gauging how many viewers are you getting feedback, and you know, that kind of stuff. I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, so here it has a report that shows who's watching and how many people have accessed it as part of Buzzsprout too. So you do get stats, and then you can see like where they're from, what apps and devices they're using, which episodes were most popular. So that you get a free dashboard of reports with Buzzsprout too, and it's free. So I think in the old days of podcasting, you would have to set this all up yourself, and Buzzsprout makes it a lot easier. Once you have your edited MP3, you just upload it, and boom, you can get it to a worldwide audience really easily.
Yeah.
So then it's super easy.
But with that, that's just audio though, right? It wouldn't be include the video, just audio.
Just audio, yeah.
That's interesting to me because I think that's a good way of encouraging our students to think of topics. I'm just thinking I had like topics and things that they can get their audience interested in and have a group to follow them. And that could be part of their evaluation of their grade, or, you know, points added towards, you know, obviously all the background work that they have to do is creating interesting topic, interview questions, et cetera, but then also the aspect of marketing their podcast. And then thirdly, what are the returns that they're getting for that? So it's just kind of a whole package deal. And I'm thinking of, you know, getting that so that they see the ins and outs from the beginning of creating one all the way through getting an audience and continue to keep their audience and tuning in. So I'm just thinking of the whole gamut. So thank you.
And it's pretty exciting because this puts them on an even playing field with NPR. I mean, they can be on Spotify and Alexa just like everybody else. And that's where I think it's so empowering. This gets your voice out, you know, and it can be very exciting. Yeah.
Yep. This was great. Thank you, Tammy.
Well, it went too fast, but thank you. You guys were great to work with. Thank you so much. So once your evaluation is done, feel free to leave as you want. I'll hang out as long as you want if people have additional questions. I know it flew by, but I kind of figured we wouldn't get through everything. That's why I really wanted tutorials on everything with screenshots and videos, and yeah, so that you can go back and try it all out.
Tomorrow's at 11 o'clock, right?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. It is. Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, there's less steps for screencasting. Yeah. Yeah.
All righty. Adios. It's been real, folks. I will see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you, Marvin.
Thank you, guys.
See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.